Hi everyone, it's Kristen. Welcome to this new episode of the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast. I'm coming to you from my camper today. The Hawkins family has been traveling the country in advance of the Tuesday, November 3rd election. I hope you voted already or you have a plan to vote pro-life first next Tuesday, this coming Tuesday. I can't believe election day is almost here. But first, I want you to hear a conversation I just had earlier this week with Kristen Day, the Executive Director of Democrats for Life of America. We did this conversation live on Facebook, but I really was doing it for you because I find, I had Kristen on my season 2 of Explicitly Pro-Life, but I wanted to talk a little bit further about what Democrats and progressives and liberals are going to be doing on Tuesday, November 3rd, and how they're reconciling their support for progressive policies with candidates who say that they're progressive and liberal, but then advocate for killing the most vulnerable amongst us. So I hope you'll get a lot out of this conversation. It was not a debate, it was a conversation. So we asked Kristen some questions. I had David Cordaro, our communications director at Students for Life, moderate discussion. He asked questions of both Kristen and I. We were internally calling it the clash of the Kristens, but there's no clash. But I hope you'll get to hear her thoughts, her perspective, and then you will hear mine, which will be a little bit different. So enjoy.
Hey everyone, welcome. My name is David. I'm the communications director at Students for Life. I am so excited for what we are going to do right now. We're colloquially calling this the clash of the Kristens. But how to vote when you are a pro-life Democrat, how to vote when you are a pro-life Republican. And here with us, we have Kristen Hawkins, president of Students for Life Action, and Kristen Day, who's the president of Democrats for Life of America. She got started in politics at Michigan State University and worked for pro-life Democrat Chief of Staff Jim Barsha, or pro-life Democrat Congressman Jim Barsha, which is kind of where she began her political journey as a Democrat, and has a really interesting story of how she kind of came to the pro-life persuasion and came to now working full-time in the pro-life movement as a Democrat, which is something that we don't usually hear. Republicans are typically the norm when you consider pro-lifers. And when someone that's not pro-life thinks of a pro-life person, they think of an old white man, which we know is totally false. So I'm so thrilled to be joined by two powerful ladies today. So welcome, Kristen and Kristen. So Kristen Day, I want to just start off. How did you get started in the pro-life movement? Which came first? Was it your identity as a Democrat, or were you a pro-lifer first?
So I was a Democrat first. I grew up in a Republican family, went to college and started working on the Dukakis campaign. So from there, I just continued to be involved in the Democratic politics. I did an internship in the state capital of Michigan, went to Washington and did an internship there. And when I graduated, I went to Capitol Hill to work for Democrats. And as a Democrat, even then it was, women's right to choose. You have to support a woman's right to choose, support abortion. And I had always been pro-life. So I was one of those personally pro-life people who just accepted the Democratic policies that you have to kill your baby to be a Democrat. And but it wasn't until I started my job with Congressman Jim Barsha, which I'm impressed that you pronounced that correctly, because a lot of people say Barcia.
Oh, thanks.
It's Barsha, so good job. But when I went to his office as the new person in the office, everyone, you get all the bad issues that nobody else wants to handle. And when I went into the office, they gave me the abortion issue because nobody else in the office wanted to handle it. And which ended up being, I was working for a pro-life Democrat. And it was that moment that I realized that, you don't have to be just personally pro-life, you can be a pro-life Democrat. And I ended up working for him. He became the co-chair of the Pro-Life Caucus. We worked very closely with Chris Smith and really trying to make sure that the Democrats would vote the right way when these important issues came up. And that brought me to, Democrats for Life when I left Capitol Hill. So it was a really interesting turn of events. I started off as a pro-choice Democrat and ended up now leading this organization and supporting pro-life Democrats all around the country.
And that's fascinating. So you didn't realize that, or did you realize that he was pro-life when you went to work for him, or did you realize that there was that discrepancy there between your beliefs and his beliefs?
Well, ironically, we had the same beliefs.
Oh,
but,
right, yes.
And then it was, I think as a Democrat, you just assume everybody supports abortion. And so at that time, we had a lot more pro-life Democrats. So I knew that he was a pro-life Democrat, but it just really didn't hit me hard until I was the one now drafting letters and researching the issues and, telling him how to, recommending how he should vote. And
you brought up a really interesting point. You said at that time there were a lot more pro-life Democrats. So what happened to the Democratic Party?
Yeah, what the hell happened to this Democratic?
How did we get to this?
Well, I want to know.
How did we get to this?
I blame, I think Obamacare is what happened. That really killed the pro-life Democrats because everybody was mad at us. We had, the Democrats were mad at us because they thought we were trying to kill Obamacare, and the pro-life movement was mad at us because we supported Obamacare.
I'm still pretty mad that you all supported Obamacare.
I know there were people who didn't talk to me for years after that. And so I think we repaired most of those relationships. But yes, so I think that was just a moment where, nobody really cared about the pro-life Democrats at all within the party or in the pro-life movement. So, anybody that's a pro-life Democrat legislator today really believes in the pro-life issue, because you don't make any friends by being a pro-life Democrat, because, your own party doesn't really like you. And the pro-life movement is really focused on supporting Republicans. So it's really a tough position to hold, which is why we feel like it's so important for us to go out there and support these candidates who are true to their values. And we're trying to find more of them. I'm looking for unapologetic pro-life Democrats is what I coined that phrase with this great woman in Grand Rapids, Michigan, Monica Sparks, who is a city councilwoman there. And she spoke at our conference in Michigan, and she just said, I just went into the Democratic Party and I said, I'm pro-life and you're just going to have to accept it. Mm-hmm. And they do. They accept her because, you just have to put it out there in front and just say, this is who I am. We agree on 99% of the issues, and you just have to accept that I'm going to vote to protect babies in the womb. And so we're looking for more candidates like that.
That's amazing. Okay, so I have a question. Let's jump right into this. So how does the pro-life Democrat vote, especially in an election like this? Do you have an affiliation to your Democratic Party or your pro-life beliefs first? And which one should you hold in higher regard? Yeah. And I'm going to ask you that, Kristen, Day, and then I'm going to go to Kristen and hear what she has to think, what her opinions are on that.
Yeah. It's so difficult, especially this election cycle, to be a pro-life Democrat. Our organization, Democrats for Life, does not endorse any candidate who is not pro-life and Democrat. So neither of the presidential candidates meet our position, or meet our criteria for being a pro-life Democrat. So we have not endorsed in the presidential race. And we are receiving a lot of calls and people really struggling with, what do we do this election cycle? So people are doing different things. But what we are focusing on as pro-life Democrats is, again, looking for these unapologetic pro-life Democrats. We've endorsed 120 pro-life Democrats around the country, and it's just exciting to see all these candidates who are boldly coming out and saying, I'm running as a pro-life Democrat. So we're encouraging our people to go out, vote for these candidates, support these candidates, do everything you can to build up the pro-life Democrat voice within the party. We're also working on ballot initiatives in Colorado and Louisiana because, we are pro-life. We are pro-life Democrats, and we want the pro-life issue to be successful. And we feel like these are ways that we can make a difference and this in Colorado and Louisiana and all the places that pro-life Democrats are running.
I think that's awesome. I saw your all's list. Being from West Virginia, I actually had the privilege of voting for pro-life Democrats before. Now they're not so much. Joe Manchin used to be pro-life, but not really so much. Now they got to Washington. I think that's awesome. And I know at Students for Life Action, we worked with you guys at Democrats for Life this spring with Dan Lipinski, Congressman Lipinski's primary, which he lost because he was a pro-life Democrat, one of the few remaining U.S. congressmen to be pro-life who was primaried by his own party and heavily primaried. And I know there were a couple of races this spring in May in New Mexico. There was a primary in Arizona, the same thing in August in a primary where I think we were able, and Students for Life Action students were able to go out and campaign on behalf of pro-life Democrats. Sadly, both of those candidates lost in their primary challenge. So it's definitely going to be an uphill fight. I think where you're seeing, I guess for the folks at home, Kristen, are most of these endorsements that you've made, they've been at the state legislative levels?
Yes. So this year we just kicked off Run Pro-Life, which we are looking for pro-life Democrats to run. And we're also expanding our search to find the candidates on local level, state level, every level of government to see, to find these Democrats and let them know that we have their back, like that they can be pro-life, they can run as a Democrat, and they can continue to vote pro-life once elected, because that's the biggest challenge. Once they get there, they think that they feel pressure to change their position. So I was saying to David earlier, we have a great race in Tennessee. I was just in Memphis this last weekend with the wonderful, incredible Representative John DeBerry, and can't say enough nice things about him. But so he is a pro-life Democrat, been pro-life 8 terms in the state house there. And the day after the filing deadline, the Democratic Party of Tennessee removed him from the ballot, and he was going to be forced to do a write-in campaign. Fortunately, the legislature got together, and it's a majority Republican, and they changed the law to allow him to put his name on the ballot as an independent. So we're proud to endorse him as a true pro-life Democrat, or a true Democrat in what he is, and we're hoping that he wins.
Yeah, that would be a great race.
It's so good for him because people in his district know who he is, and it's not into the party to come out and just say that they know better. So they don't think that people should have the opportunity to vote for a pro-life Democrat at all. So they want to, X him off. So we're proud of him, just standing firm, and he's happy to know that we're there standing with him.
So what are you telling people when they're asking how to vote for the presidential race? What's the recommendation that Democrats for Life is giving people?
No, unfortunately, we can't give a recommendation because we are not endorsing either man. Neither one of them meet our criteria, and so we cannot take a position in the race. Especially with, unfortunately, Joe Biden really changed a lot, and, to change the platform to say that we want to overturn Hyde and allow public funding of abortion and codify Roe. That's pretty extreme for the Democratic Party to go that far. So we are, I tell you, I have seen unprecedented growth at Democrats for Life. People are coming out of the woodwork to come and help us, and they're organizing. And we have so many new programs that we're lifting off. The Run Pro-Life, we have a student group that's organizing, trying to get young pro-life Democrats organized. And so I think for us, it's, I was thinking back to this and just what happened this year, and I have a lot of people to thank. I feel like I should make a speech about like some sort of, a Golden Globe speech, who I should thank. But I think it started with Pete Buttigieg. He went in Des Moines, Iowa in January. He basically told me that there was no room in the party for someone like me. And that was a moment in time that just kicked off, people were like, wait, what did he just say? I can't believe he just said that to her. And that just kicked off the momentum of this year. And then I think Dan Lipinski, so grateful to him for just a man of principle and standing up for what he believes, even though it meant losing his seat, and not backing down. And I think both President Trump and Vice President Biden helped with our momentum, and pro-life Democrats really coming to say enough. We're tired of being taken for granted. We're tired of people not listening to us, and we've just seen this tremendous growth. I'm very excited about the future, our voice and our impact. 2021.
So Kristen Hawkins, I have a question for you. Kristen Day brought up a point about Obamacare and how Obamacare was kind of the issue that shifted everyone to exclude pro-lifers from the Democratic Party. Recently, with all the confirmation hearings for Amy Coney Barrett, we heard over and over again that Obamacare was an issue and people were losing their health care, and she's stripping away rights of millions of people. How, now that she is Justice Amy Coney Barrett, how do we react now that the Supreme Court was kind of a big voting issue for Republicans? In 2016, Republicans voted, or even mushy people voted for Donald Trump because of the Supreme Court, and it worked out well because they got 3 solid Supreme Court justices nominated to the bench. So why do we still vote pro-life first? Like, who do we vote for now that he's fulfilled that promise?
Absolutely. I think when someone tells you, I don't know how I'm going to vote in the presidential race, I think you say Amy Coney Barrett. That's who, think about that elections truly do have consequences. And I will be the first person to admit, in 2016, I had not a lot of faith that President Donald Trump, if he were elected president, was actually going to govern as a pro-life president, that he was going to uphold any promises that he had made. I ended up voting for the president in 2016, and I wrote an op-ed about that pretty close to Election Day. And I said, look, even if he does nothing, it'll still be better than the absolute certainty that I know that we would have with the President Hillary Clinton and her abortion extremism, and how closely she was tied. Cecile Richards, the then president of Planned Parenthood's daughter, was working for Hillary Clinton's campaign. I mean, they were linked. And so I think I and many people have been pleasantly surprised that President Trump, regardless of whether or not, people will still argue like he's not personally pro-life. That's not for me to decide. What I do know is he has governed as an anti-abortion president, and we have now 215 judges, 3 Supreme Court justices who are pro-life. And that's going to completely reshape the future and the trajectory of the pro-life movement, because as we all know, the pro-abortion movement is a movement of extremism. They can't pass what they really want to do because people, regardless of how they call themselves pro-life or pro-choice, no one really likes abortion. And so they use judges and they use, judicial activists to overturn the will of the people time and time and time again. And so this is going to be huge. So I think when you think about who you're going to be voting for on Tuesday, if you haven't voted yet, if you're like me and don't trust them not to steal the election, I'll be voting in person in PA. Then if nothing else, you have to think about the judges. And I think that's why at Students for Life and Students for Life Action, we've been talking about voting pro-life first. Not to say that there's not many issues that we all care about, and we all can actually take diverse opinions about how to reach different and meet different challenges that we face in our society, but we all should agree that this injustice of abortion should end. And so we saw with Obamacare, coming back up in the Justice Barrett confirmation hearings, almost as if and no one is campaigning on taking away health care for those who need health care. No one, that's not, I think, a very attractive thing for any candidate to be advocating for. I think there are serious problems with Obamacare, and there are problems that lead to socialized medicine, healthcare rationing. But I don't know. I was kind of surprised to see how big the left was making Obamacare when we were talking about the confirmation hearings, because I was like, I don't hear anybody arguing that people who have pre-existing conditions shouldn't have healthcare. No one is arguing that.
Yeah, well, and now too, we saw last night AOC and a bunch of other leaders of the Democratic
Instantly.
Party have tweeted that they need to expand the Supreme Court. And so, I mean, that's a clear, consequence of our voting, because elections have consequences. So, Kristen Day, I'm going to kind of bring it back to you. Like, what are your thoughts on this whole expanding the court discussion that we've been hearing of, Biden and Harris refused to answer the question during the debates. No one's really addressing it. And then all of a sudden we see leaders in the party kind of speak out in support of expanding the court.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be an interesting discussion post-election to see what actually happens with that whole process. And I just want to go back to Amy Coney Barrett. And, as a feminist, as a woman, I think a lot of people, even within Democrats for Life, a lot of women were excited to see her just represent in such just an incredible way, just really smart and a mother, able to do it all. And I say, like, she was very similar to Ruth Bader Ginsburg in that being a mother, a woman, breaking glass ceilings, advancing women's rights, and really representing women in a good way. And that's why I never understood why Ruth Bader Ginsburg supported abortion the way that she did, because it just didn't make a lot of sense for everything fighting for equality for women. And, you shouldn't have to kill your child to advance your career. So I think both of them in that way are pretty admirable and good role models for both. So it'll be, but as far as the court packing, I mean, that's just going to have to be a discussion that comes after whoever wins the election. Democrats for Life hasn't taken a position on that. We haven't had a discussion on whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, but obviously we're excited about having a pro-life majority on the court and the possibility of overturning Roe, which we support overturning Roe, and would like to see that happen for sure.
Do you think if we do expand the court that we will see Roe versus Wade overturned in our lifetime?
No, I mean, I think if we add additional justices, I mean, depending on what kind of justices are added, and if we had more justices who support abortion, obviously that would not be a good thing and something that we would support, putting more abortion-minded people on the court. So it would probably, we would have to have a discussion on our position on that going forward.
Well, I mean, it'd be the end of our constitutional republic as we know it, because everyone gets a trophy culture, comes home to roost, and we just keep changing the game. Like, what else do we change at this point?
Doesn't everyone get a trophy now?
No, not at the Hawkins house. I don't let them beat me at Monopoly.
No, not in the Day household either.
So back to this whole idea of voting. Another talking point that we see, especially on social media, there's this whole TikTok, Instagram generation of Gen Z, Gen X, of people that I think are kind of uneducated and need to take a civics class. But they're talking about how the abortion rates decrease under Democratic administrations. We've seen a lot of stuff about that, and there's this one chart. So Dr. Michael New came out with the study, the Lazier Institute. How do we interpret that as pro-lifers, and how do you, Kristen Day, interpret that as a Democrat, and Kristen Hawkins, how do you interpret that as a Republican?
Yeah, so I always feel like I'm bringing bad news to the table with my Democrats when we talk about this issue, because you as Democrats, you like to think that it's true, like Democrat presidents can wave their magic wand and the abortion rate goes down, and how great that is. But unfortunately, it's not true. Abortion policy is done in the states, and when you look at the states with the highest abortion rates, it's New York, California, Washington, D.C. So I mean, tell me, why, if the Democratic president can lower the abortion rate so much, why can't the Democratic states like California, with this huge, I mean, they have such generous social packages to support people, health care and, a lot of benefits to support, people who need assistance. So why is the abortion rate so high there? Why is the abortion rate so high in New York? They have an unlimited abortion fund. So I think we have to look at this question a little more seriously, instead of just saying that a Democratic president can wave the magic wand and make the abortion rate go down, because it's simply not, it doesn't back up. I mean, you can look at the charts and say, well, oh, it went a little bit down more under Obama, but you have to look at why, and look at where the highest abortion rates are.
Yeah, Kristen, what do you have to say? Kristen Hawkins.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a misnomer, and people like to believe that the more money we throw and more free things we give people, the lower abortion rates will drop, and that's not necessarily true. I mean, anybody who's served in the pro-life movement, who's been at a pregnancy center, knows it's not just about the free stuff you can promise her. That's not good. That can alleviate some pressure that she's feeling at the moment, but that there's something else that has to happen there. She has to find this like inner strength within her to know that she can do it, that she can carry her child to term, that she can give birth, that she can place her child with an adoptive family, or that she can be a mother. And then you go and find these, social welfare programs or the community support systems that are needed to make that possible. That's kind of like a secondary thing, but it's something that gets thrown into our faces all the time. But if you look at Dr. Michael New's research, I mean, we have a 50% decline in abortion since, 1980? The abortion rates have steadily dropped across into our entire country. But you're right, Kristen, what Kristen just said is correct. Nothing gets done in Washington, D.C., in case anyone's been living under a rock. Like, abortion policies, abortion laws get passed on the state level. This is why we actually founded Students for Life Action. That's why we've been focusing on state legislative races, because no one ever pays attention to these races, but yet this is where abortion policy is made. And so you've got to look at what's been happening in the states. And I think you really, especially like if you look at the Bill Clinton and the Barack Obama abortion ratio numbers, and people say, look at these declines. Well, look what was happening in the states, because when you have a Democrat president, people kind of like instinctively know, okay, I can't rely on Washington, D.C. to do what I've been saying I want them to do. I have to go back and do it in my hometown. I have to do it in my state legislature. And we see that every time there's a Democrat president, that you see an increase in pro-life legislation. And especially in the 90s, you had, the kind of the invention of like the pro-life incremental legislation, the partial birth abortion restriction, which Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote a horrendous dissent against that 2007 partial birth abortion case, and they finally outlawed that. So I think that's a misnomer, and I think people just need to be correcting it. Like, no, abortion's been on the decline since the 1980s, and you have to look at what's been going on in the states in that time period.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that's important to look at is that with that California number, like California stopped reporting to the CDC in 1997.
Absolutely.
So of course these numbers are going to go down. When you have the biggest abortion market and they suddenly stop reporting, of course you're going to see a huge decline in the numbers. Mm-hmm. And I know there are other states that don't report.
California and New York, the two biggest abortion states, aren't reporting their numbers to the CDC. That's actually insane. Like, we don't have a national abortion reporting law. So like, if we actually want good data, or like when I'm looking up scientific studies on PubMed.gov, I always look for international studies on abortion, because I look for research studies that are done in countries where abortion is non-controversial, because here we don't actually have good data on abortion. It's unbelievable that we don't have a national abortion reporting law.
We rely on the Guttmacher Institute to give us all our abortion data. So
yeah, we literally have to rely on the abortion industry to tell us what they're doing, and they get to report on their own numbers. Like, it doesn't make sense. And Kristen, exactly what you said, California, anybody can walk into the state of California, regardless of whether or not they're a legal citizen or not, and get a plethora of free things from the taxpayers of California, which is bankrupting the state. And that's why all of the people who are making jobs are leaving the state of California. That's why we need to build a wall around California and keep them in there so they stop exporting their bad policies to Texas and Arizona and Montana that we had to door knock this weekend. I'm a little bitter about that. But like, it's crazy, because they have all of these things, everything that everyone says that a woman needs, but yet the abortion rate is still through the roof. So it tells you there's something else going on.
Yeah. Can I go back to what you said earlier about a pregnant woman needing the support? Like, you can't just give them something and say, go have your baby.
Yeah.
Like, the support is so important. And that's what California is doing wrong. I mean, they're trying to shut down pregnancy centers and trying to make them say that they don't help and don't go to these pregnancy centers, which are so supportive and lovely. You know, they provide clothing, job training, and that's what women need too. They need Kathy Delkemper, who was a former Democratic Congresswoman. She was a single mother without health care and had her baby, but it was the support that helped her, have her baby and be able to keep her baby and get, find a job and care for her family. And that the social support from, the state government actually helped her lift her up. And so California has that support there, but they don't provide the support of people. Like, it takes a village of people to, in these pregnancy centers, provide that for the women to make sure that they do have somebody walking hand in hand with them, and just providing a shoulder, and somebody to walk with them in this journey. And it's a real shame that California wants to shut all these wonderful places down.
So I'm going to kind of bring it back to a more basic idea and taking it a little bit outside of the context of voting. But how do you respond to the idea that Trump isn't actually pro-life? We've seen so much about this, especially from the Democratic Party, that Trump isn't pro-life. And I think the term itself, pro-life, has become so muddied, and people don't really know what it means, where it started as anti-abortion and euthanasia, and now it's started picking up other things. And Kristen Day, your organization, posted a graphic that says pro-life means all these things. And then we saw a couple weeks after that, there was a Democrat who called himself pro-life, even though his voting record is 100% pro-abortion. So how do we work with that term and move forward in messaging of brand? Do we continue using pro-life? Do we start saying consistent life or whole life, or what do we do? Because we're not going to win everybody over.
Yeah, no, that's a big problem. And I think you see my sign back here, pro-life for the whole life. And that's what we call ourselves as pro-life Democrats, pro-life for the whole life. And I think pro-life generally in the term means anti-abortion, same thing. And we as Democrats extend that to childcare, prenatal health care, job accommodations for pregnant women. And because we kind of expand that, the whole life definition, so pro-life for the whole life. And yes, it does get muddied, especially in Democrats who are running for office. Connor Lamb ran as a pro-life Democrat, and he is not. And we had a lot of frustrated members of Democrats for Life come to us after the election, and they said, well, he said he was a pro-life Democrat, and they were quite frustrated. They felt like they were duped. And so, yeah, I think as our organization, with our Run Pro-Life initiative, we are really going to strongly vet candidates. We started it this year, but we want to, again, in 2021, really look at these candidates and really explain to them, these Democratic candidates in particular, of what it means to be pro-life for the whole life. And we have a scorecard, and we will be really holding people to the fire. If they can't run as a pro-life Democrat unless they're going to vote the way that they said they're going to vote. So we want to really start pushing harder and, finding, again, these unapologetic pro-life Democrats who are bold and courageous, like Dan Lipinski. I mean, Senator Jackson from Louisiana, is just exceptional. We need more people like them who will really pave this new way for what it means to be pro-life and pro-life for the whole life Democrat.
So would you consider Obamacare to be a pro-life issue? I mean, a lot of times we hear that is, especially with the Amy Coney Barrett hearings, we heard that it's not a pro-life, or she's not pro-life, she doesn't support Obamacare.
Yeah, we consider it a whole life issue, pro-life for the whole life. It's part of our whole life. We've had, I'm sure you probably did too, we had friends whose lives were saved by Obamacare. One of our former board members, he lost his job and his cancer came back, and he was able to get life-saving care. So we consider that a whole life issue, and that's who we are. I mean, we're different from we are part of the pro-life movement, but we are different. We are Democrats, but I think as pro-life Democrats, we need to work with the pro-life movement on all the issues that we do agree with. And again, as Democrats, we need to work with our own party on the issues that we do agree with over there. So, I mean, we walk this very fine line of, we want unity all around. We want to work with everybody on the issues we agree with. And, because as I said earlier, we're working in Colorado with Republicans in Colorado to pass Prop 115. We're working with, Democrats and Republicans in Louisiana to pass Katrina's great Love Life Amendment. So we just want to work for pro-life, whole life issues with everybody and anybody who will work with us.
That's great. Kristen, same question for you. How do you respond to the term Trump isn't actually pro-life? Oh, you're muted.
Someone muted me. How did that happen? Donald Trump is pro-life. He is the anti-abortion candidate. And pro-life means you are anti-abortion, and that's what he is. He's campaigning as anti-abortion, and he's actually governed as an anti-abortion president. I think what's concerning, and where I disagree with Democrats for Life and some of the things Kristen's been saying, but respectfully, is on this whole life thing. And how do we couch pro-life? I think we all acknowledge that there is a branding problem with the word pro-life. That when people hear the word pro-life, they think old white religious man who wants to yell at women and keep women barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. Like that's the media narrative that has been created about who pro-lifers are. That's why we're so intentional all the time when we're in front of the Supreme Court, no matter what we're doing, of what kind of narrative we're creating, because we need to show people who pro-lifers really are. But I think there's this view that, well, in order to get people to like us, let's just expand what pro-life is. And pro-life should be 20 different things. And I think that's a problem. You brought that up earlier when you say that pro-life means 20 or 30 different things. It actually narrows your tent and the amount of people who will actually be able to join you, because it's going to be hard to find people who agree with you with all 20 principles or policy positions that you take. To go back to your Obamacare issue, no, I do not think Obamacare is a pro-life piece of legislation. Obamacare is the single greatest expansion of abortion we've ever seen in this country, taxpayer-funded abortion. We still have the lawsuits going. The poor little sisters of the poor, the nuns, are still being told they have to pay for abortion causing contraception. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are totally fine with forcing the nuns who aren't having sex to have abortion causing contraceptions have to pay for that contraception in their health care plan. So while Obamacare has helped people and the ability for people to have health care, we all can go to stories, but I also can give you stories of people who Obamacare has really hurt, especially in the cystic fibrosis community, because the state healthcare exchanges are crap. I've researched them, and they're not great plans. They're high deductible plans. A lot of people who were self-employed lost their healthcare plans, couldn't keep their doctors, which was a main, promise that President Obama made over and over again. And so there were a lot of people who had very high cost, expensive medical needs, who had good health insurance, who then lost health insurance because of the ACA and Obamacare, and still continue to struggle with it today. So for every good story you can hear, I can raise you a bad story. And so, and the challenge is Obamacare is a quasi-public, quasi-private piece of crap that everyone knows isn't going to work. And the goal of the Democrats all along has been to lead us to socialized health care, which for me, as a mom of 2 kids with cystic fibrosis, is absolutely terrifying, because I can show you studies of children who live in healthcare systems in nations where all the healthcare is free, socialized healthcare systems, and I can show you the life expectancy rates for children with cystic fibrosis who are born today in those countries versus children who are born here in the United States of America with cystic fibrosis, who have a better outcome, who are expected to live longer because they get care faster. And they, for example, a drug my son has been on for 3 or 4 years, it was just approved in Europe last fall. 4 years after he's been on this drug, which they believe will extend his life for potentially a decade, they just approved it in Europe because the European government didn't want to pay for that drug. And so I think we have to be really careful, because when we start saying all of these things are pro-life, I think it can none of us, regardless of whether we're conservative or liberal or progressive or Republican or Democrat, no one is arguing that people who have pre-existing conditions or people who need health care shouldn't have health care. No one is arguing that. It's the same deal like I don't know, Kristen, where you stand on school choice. No one is arguing that children who are trapped in the inner cities shouldn't have access to high quality education. We may have different policy prescriptions for how to get to those places and how to solve those problems. And that's why I favor keeping pro-life very simple of what it was intended to be, because then we can disagree, and we can disagree earnestly about how to solve other problems, but it keeps us all united in this mission, which is let's all work together to end abortion and abolish abortion, make it legal and make it unthinkable. And we know that's going to be something that we need left and right working together on.
So to me, it sounds like I think you are agreeing more than you disagree here in the sense that, Kristen Hawkins, you would support potentially a plan if it excluded abortion and didn't strip away other people's rights to health care. And Kristen Day, I think you would also very much support a plan, a Medicare for all type of plan that, not allowed, but removed the abortion mandate within the plan.
Yes. Democrats for Life was very much opposed to. We were involved in amicus briefs and fighting the Obama administration on Little Sisters of the Poor and all the other attempts to expand abortion under Obamacare. So we were very much opposed to any attempts to fund abortion. So just to be clear on that. Yeah.
And I think this brings up a good point at the end of this, as we're going to kind of wrap up here a little bit. Two women, both leading organizations here that are causing great change within culture and within our political climate. How do you, and maybe this is something more so for Gen Z, Gen X, people that are on Instagram and TikTok, how do you start to build these fruitful conversations with people that you disagree with? How do you start to find that common ground? Kristen Day, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, I think within the Democratic Party, we do have to sort of prove that we are real Democrats, because, we get this anywhere we go. I think we were trying to do an ad for Prop 115, and we were having a hard time finding somebody to place the ad because one group didn't want to work with us because they were a Republican group and they didn't want to taint their image. And then the other group didn't want to help us because they were Democrats and they didn't want to taint their image working with a pro-life Democrat. So the conversations are very tricky for us, I think trickier than most pro-lifers. But, you have to keep the dialogue open, and we obviously have a lot of conversations with people. Kathy Dahl-Kemper was really great when she was in the Congress. She was able to go to the Women's Caucus meetings as a pro-life Democrat, and she started to just, connect with people on the issues that they agree with. And that's what we do as Democrats, and saying, we agree on these issues. We may disagree on these other issues, but let's find where the common ground of agreement. And when Obama's first term, when he was running for election, we were able to have a lot more of those conversations then than were with Vice President Biden. And because the Obama campaign was much more interested in hearing what we had to say. and trying to find out the areas of agreement. Unfortunately, Vice President Biden hasn't sought out those same opportunities, even though we worked even harder to get them. People saw that we had a full page ad in the New York Times. We had over 100, religious leaders sign a letter to the Vice President Biden saying we need to moderate on abortion. We had over 100 legislators send a letter to Vice President Biden saying we need to moderate on abortion. And so when the other side is unwilling to have dialogue, it's really problematic. But it's
and those were all
Democrat
legislators, right?
Pardon me?
And those are all Democrat legislators, right? That signed up.
Democrat legislators trying to work within our party. But we need to keep trying to have these dialogues and finding areas of agreement, which is super important. And with my good friend Kristen here, finding areas of agreement. We want to end abortion, and we're going to work together to do it. And we have different paths to get there, but those different paths are important. And we all have a role to play here. And you've done a great job reaching out to student groups and really having an impact and working on the campaigns and helping these legislators win their races. So hats off to my friend Kristen at Students for Life for all the good work that you have done.
Wow. And Kristen, what do you have to say?
Well, hats off to Kristen for being the most disliked person in every room she ever goes to. I mean, I don't know anyone else Kristen was on my podcast last season, and we were talking about, because I was like, I don't know anybody else that no matter what room she's in, people don't like her. And she's totally fine with that. And she's totally comfortable with that. And knowing that's where Democrats for Life should be. I wish all of us were as comfortable saying, no, this is where I feel like I need to be advocating. This is where my mission field is, and just go out and get it. And, I said it earlier, don't let anyone cancel you. Like, you can't let anyone you're the only person that can cancel you. So don't let anyone cancel you. And even if you're, not welcomed in a room, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, keep talking and keep doing what you're called to do. So congrats to Kristen. Everyone needs to be as unafraid as you. So what was your question, though? Did you have an actual question I was supposed to answer?
The question was, I think you answered it, of how do we kind of move past this disagreement and find common ground in order to convince people to vote pro-life?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why we try to do like the Vote Pro-Life First hashtag and try to get people to, I don't really care what party you call yourself a member of. I don't care how you label yourself. I don't really care how you view all these other issues. I'm not going to try to convince you on, smoking or gay marriage or whatever the issue is, capital punishment. Like, we can all have different issues that we care about, different opinions, different policy prescriptions to solve different ills, but let's all work together on this one issue, and let's keep the main thing. I think that's what's so frustrating to me is I hear the I'm a pro-life Democrat or I'm a pro-life liberal being used then to justify voting for candidates who are pro-abortion. And that's wrong, because if you believe, like I do, and as Kristen does, that abortion is this injustice that happens 2,300 times a day, this act of violence that ends unique, whole, living human being, how can you then go and justify voting for people and say, well, I'm going to vote for this person in spite of the fact, because nobody would, like, we wouldn't do that with any other issue. Like, I think it's just falling into the trap, because none of us would say, oh, well, I really like where this candidate stands, but he also, supports abusing toddlers being abused. Like, no one would be okay with that, and no one would like say that's okay. But then when it comes to abortion, but you can replace a fetus, replace infant, replace preborn child with another marginalized group, and then see if you're okay with still voting for that person.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you brought up a great point. I'm going to ask it, and then we're going to wrap this up. But who are you voting for? Kristen Hawkins, who are you voting for?
I think it's pretty clear. Are you talking about president?
Yeah.
I haven't done all my research in PA yet for other candidates, but yes, I will be voting for Vice President Pence and President Trump.
All right, Kristen Day, how do you vote as a pro-life Democrat?
As a pro-life Democrat, you have to go in and make the best decision you can. I mean, because neither candidate meets our criteria, so you just have to go in and do your best. I think, we did a poll early on, and it was split. Some people are voting for Biden, some people are voting for Trump, some people are writing in. Actually, somebody wrote in me. So
there you go. Kristen Day for president.
So if you're having trouble, just write Kristen Day in as president. See if I can get 2 votes instead of 1. It's tough. I mean, it's really tough. But we, as Democrats for Life, we are really trying to give people more options of candidates on the state and local level to vote for. And who knows, maybe in 2024 we'll have a pro-life Democrat on the ballot.
I've heard mumblings of that.
We'll be in Iowa. We're gonna start organizing in Iowa, and hopefully we can have somebody on the ballot in 2024.
David's got some connections.
Start things up.
My home state.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's. You have to ask yourself: Sometimes people say, "Well, I'm gonna vote for the lesser of 2 evils. I don't like any of the candidates running." The question is, are you voting to lessen evil or not? And we know what the evil of our day is, and that's abortion. And I think it's really, really clear. That nothing kills more human beings every day than abortion. And, I've seen all kinds of things, David, like, I don't like President Trump, or I don't like this candidate because of what, their tweets, or how the future of the party or the movement will be after President Trump is president. And I think the question is, who is going to help us end abortion faster? Who's going to save more lives? That's the question at the end of the day for me.
Yeah. Amy Coney Barrett.
Amy Coney Barrett. Thank you.
Amy Coney Barrett.
Justice. Amy.
All right. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for being on. This was fantastic, and I hope it provides some clarity for those who are still undecided, those who consider themselves a Democrat, those who consider themselves a Republican but disagree with the Republican Party on some issues, how to vote and how critical it is to vote pro-life first this election. So thank you. Also, we were talking a little bit about Iowa this week. We had a huge win at the University of Northern Iowa this week. The student group, Students for Life group, was denied by the student organization board and the student government, and we're actually labeled as a hate group by the campus. And we worked with our friends at Alliance Defending Freedom and got that turned around pretty quickly. And in a statement from the president, he said, "This was an opportunity to better understand the breadth and depth of the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States." So we're happy to help educate him on that. So cool. Thank you so much, ladies. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen. Bye.
Bye, Kristen.